and gentlemen, it brings me great privilege to introduce our next speaker for the next session. Pastor David Kuria is a communication strategist and consultant who is passionate about the church and its ability to tell its story. He is also the founder of 1,000 Watts, a boutique communications agency that provides bespoke marketing and communication solutions to brands and organizations. He has worked with a cross-section of organizations, including many faith-based institutions, helping them focus their communications and run successful marketing campaigns. Pastor Kuria serves as the head of communications for Mavuno Church, a movement of churches that is headquartered in Nairobi. And as of 2022, he and his wife, Joanne Kuria, lead the Mavuno Lavington campus located in Nairobi. He's also the CEO of the Fearless Summit. He's happily married and resides in Nairobi with his wife and 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fearless stage, Pastor David Kuria.
It's on this side. Oh, there you go, there you go. Someone sabotaged me. Good afternoon, Fearless. Oh, you can do better than that. Good afternoon, Fearless. Did you? Whoa, okay, there you go. Did you guys hear that amazingly beautiful voice? Did you guys hear it? That introduced me. I don't know who it is. Who is it? Let me just say, Fearless has some beautiful girls. Let me just say, Fearless, just look around. No, don't do that. It's not a singles conference, let me just say. But apparently, it's a very wonderful voice that has introduced me. And that voice said that I'm happily married. It has told me that I'm happily married. Whether I like it or not, apparently today I am happily married. If you have not joined the dots yet, don't worry. The dots will come closer as we go along. But once again, good afternoon, Fearless. What an incredible honor for me to be here and to be back on the stage at the Fearless Summit 2023. Thank you so much. One of my absolutely favorite hangouts every year. It's full of such important people and such incredible. Could just turn to someone next to you, just look at them and say, you're so lucky to be sitting next to me. I'm so important. You're so lucky. You are so fortunate today to be sitting next to someone like me. You don't even know. Then turn to the other person and tell them, I'm not sure about. No, don't do that. But it's awesome to be here at Fearless. And we're going to be doing some things at Fearless we've never done before, including a live worship album recording on the last day. Movie premiere. It's an incredible movie, by the way. You want to be here tomorrow. I've watched it, some beautiful cinematography. And we're going to be premiering that movie in this part of the world for the very first time. So I'm excited. Anyone excited to be here? Yeah. Love it. Well, as you've heard, my name is David Kuria. I've had the privilege of leading the team that puts Fearless together for the past couple of years. And it's just been such an incredible journey and ride. I want to celebrate one Pastor Kevin Derito, who is not here as I celebrate him. Tell him I was going to send him M-Pesa, but he's not here. Well, I don't know what to do now. Send it to you. All right. Thank you very much. But he was my predecessor, and he's here coming from Washington, D.C. I was just going to celebrate him just for a moment. Now, I've been to Fearless. Obviously, I guess that's pretty obvious. But I've been to Fearless before. I've had the privilege of being on the stage and sharing some thoughts through the years. Especially on media and media engagement. It's something that I'm completely passionate about. My key passion is that intersection of church and media, that nexus between them. And I've had the privilege over the past couple of years to stand on the stage and be able to say a couple of things. And I know you guys are now tired of seeing me and tired of hearing my voice. Don't pretend. Okay, if Mo says no, then I believe you. But the rest of you, I'm not so certain. So today I thought we're going to do it a little bit differently, guys. What I have done is I have assembled some of my really, really good friends, people who are well experienced in different areas to do with media, and we're going to have a conversation with them about what I think is a very critical topic for the church. Why do I think it's a critical topic? The reason for it is because I believe we've got the most important message in the history of the world. And we live in an incredible time where media affords us the opportunity to be able to disseminate this message in a way that people before us have never been able to do before. And the question is, how then do we take advantage of that? So in just a moment, what I am going to do is introduce a couple of my friends who, as I said, have much more experience than me. Some are much prettier than me. You will join the dots as we go along. And just have a conversation with them. But I just want to make a few comments before that and just say, I was here last year. We had a conversation with the senior pastor and founder of Fearless, Pastor Murugi, and that was 12 months ago. And I've been asking myself, what's happened in the 12 months? What's happened in our part of the world in the past 12 months? I'm going to mention just a couple of things, 4 or 5 things, really quickly that I see have happened just in terms of statistics and growth of different things, just for us to get some context for this conversation. Here are some things that have gone on in the past 12 months or so, and I'll talk about our context here in Kenya. And the reason for that is just to give context to the conversation that we are going to have as we go along. So I'm not going to take very much time, a couple of minutes, and just go through a couple of things that I see have happened in the Kenyan context. First thing has to do with internet connection. Anyone know the current population of Kenya? It's about 54 million, actually, is what 2023. And of the 54 million, do you know how many of them have mobile phones? Oh, it says right there. My guy, unaniangusha, what do I say? You're dropping me. You've already put up on the screen. Okay. We have 63 million mobile phones in Kenya. Anyone know how that's possible? You do, because you've got multiple gadgets. Over the past 12 months in Kenya, we've had a 2% increase in population, but an 8% increase in internet users. Now, another thing that's been interesting for us when we talk about internet connectivity in this part of the world is the growth in as far as internet speed is concerned. The average mobile internet connection speed via mobile phone is actually 20.4 Mbps. Did you know that? That's what the average speed is on your mobile phone. It's about 20.4, and they say the average fixed internet connection speed is at about 10 Mbps in Kenya. Mobile internet connection speed in Kenya has increased by 7% in the last 12 months. And it's just showing you kind of the growth of this thing in this part of the world. It said that 1 in 3 Kenyans is an internet user, and 1 in 5 Kenyans is an active social media user. 1 in 5. Now, you know, many of us live in urban settings, and it's difficult to wrap your mind around a conversation like that. But when you think about all of rural Kenya, and to say 1 in 5 people is not just a user, but is an active social media user. Our top internet searches in Kenya, I hope it's all up on the screen. Anyone know what's the thing Kenyans look for more than anything else? You got it. Betting. Betting is actually one of our biggest searches on the internet in Kenya, followed by news and then followed by sports. No, let me not go there. Let me not go there. And a final thing to say about this is to say this. Digital ad spend, what does that mean? It's just the amount of money that's spent on digital advertising in Kenya has grown from 3.7% of total advertising revenue in 2022 to 24%. It's a very, very significant jump in 1 year, from about 4% to about 22% in 1 year alone. And it begins to show you where ad dollars, ad shillings are being spent. The second thing I want to talk about really quickly is the emergence of a really, really powerful social media platform in Kenya. And that platform is called
TikTok. Now, you may have seen this because Reuters Institute Digital News reported as of 2023 that the top users of TikTok in the world are Kenya. The top users of TikTok, and this is not per capita, this is total usage across the world, is actually in Kenya. Thailand, the Philippines, South Africa, those nations follow, but Kenya is actually the top. Anyone saw that report? Reuters Institute Digital Report 2023 survey. TikTok is gaining ground in the distribution of news, especially among younger audiences, a place that Facebook has held for a very long time. In Kenya, it's one of the fastest growing, it is the fastest growing social media platform, and it is now rivaling Instagram. Actually, sorry, I think it's about maybe 18% is thereabouts is is TikTok, and about 20% is Instagram. So by the time I'm talking to you next year, I can guarantee you TikTok has already surpassed Twitter, by the way, far surpassed Twitter in this part of the world. Instagram is now the next thing before it begins to actually rival Facebook in this. How many people here have a TikTok account? Let me just see. How many people have a TikTok account? How many have an active TikTok account? How many have a serious No, let's not go there. But the emergence of TikTok has been very interesting. In Kenya, I found a report that talked about how it found over 200,000 TikTok influencers who had over 500,000 followers in Kenya. It just shows you the growth. Now, with the panel, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. Third thing I want to talk about, I'm just highlighting a couple of things that I've seen over the past 12 months. The third one is influencer marketing. Influencer marketing. And this is really when brands begin to use influencers to push their product on their pages. Geopoll says that in Kenya, 53% of people trust influencer recommendations more than they do journalists and brand advertising. Because people buy people, not products. You know that. People buy people, not products. Now, they say that, influencer marketing has always existed. Santa Claus was once the face of... What did you say? Oh, I had a very interesting response on this side. Michael Power was the face of... Aha. I had someone there shout, Guinness! Jesus. But I'm just kidding. But it's happened through the years. The annual spend on influencer advertising in Kenya in the past 12 months was about $1.4 million. And this is the reported amount. This is reported amounts that have been spent on influencer marketing just over the past 12 months alone, and is expected to reach about $1.85 million this year. So that's influencer marketing. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit with the panel that comes on. The fourth thing is podcasting. Anyone here have a podcast? Anybody have a local podcast they listen to? Local just means from your country that you listen to on a regular basis. Pastor, should I plug your podcast here? Is this the place to plug the Pastor Murugi Wanjao podcast? If you have never listened. It's considered the next frontier in broadcasting. Again, we'll talk about it. We've seen a huge explosion in podcasting in Kenya. Now, the challenge with podcasting that we've seen in this part of the world, and I think in many places, is just the revenue model and how you monetize podcasting. Until we are able to crack that, what really happens with podcasting is that most successful podcasts right now are working with different brands to be able to push them and support them. So that's one of the things that's coming. I don't think we are there yet with podcasting. I think a lot of people are doing it as passion projects at the moment, but it's one of the things that's definitely growing as we go along. And the final thing that we'll again talk about with the panel is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence. Kenya actually ranks 5th in Africa in AI readiness. And that just means the government's readiness to implement artificial intelligence solutions. And if you think about artificial intelligence and social media, for instance, one of the things that we've had through the years is Twitter bots. Twitter bots are just these bots that go on Twitter and like and repost repost people's comments, and people have figured out kind of ways of creating bots. So if you post something, it's retweeted and so on and so forth. But artificial intelligence is going to be the next frontier completely when we think about social media and how we use social media. Think about a brand that has social media. Think about a church that has that uses multiple social media pages, and now you have an artificial intelligence platform that's able to kind of go through all the data and not just like or comment, or not just retweet, but actually comment, because it's intelligence. Think about one that's able to gather data about you and have a conversation with you. So there you are posting on your Instagram, and there's someone who's responding, and that's completely artificial intelligence. There's nobody behind that. They understand conversation, they understand who you are, they understand the context of it. It's an incredible frontier that we are going to be going into. We'll spend a bit of time on it today, but it's an incredible frontier that we are going to be going into in the next couple of years. And I think it's important we begin some sort of conversation about what is that? What does it mean for us? So those are just some of the things that I thought top of mind for me have been happening in our context over the past 12 months, even as we have this conversation. So now, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, please. Because we want to invite our panelists to come and have this conversation with us. Over to the most beautiful voice in the room.
Grace Murugi is a Christian marketplace leader and an award-winning digital strategist. She's reputed for linking digital campaigns to business growth, social impact, and brand equity. With a keen eye for new market share, she offers a unique blend of leadership, vision, and knowledge on holistic digital strategy and implementation. She worked at WPP Scan Group, handling consumer packaged goods for Unilever and Kimberly-Clark, and then transitioned to Safaricom, where she was the digital lead for close to 5 years. In this capacity, she championed the insourcing of digital media for Safaricom, as well as iconic campaigns like Eliud 159, M-Pesa app, among many other campaigns. She then transitioned to OXFAM International as the head of digital strategy and has championed the influencing of humanitarian work on the global digital landscape. A lover of Christian fiction and autobiographies, Grace is also a seasoned entrepreneur. She founded a business, scaled it, and then sold it last year. She's also a top 40 under 40 women in Kenya recipient. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fearless Summit stage, Grace Murugi. Second up is MUCHIRI NYAGAH. MUCHIRI is a co-founder and executive director of the Local Development Research Institute, an action-oriented 2023 think tank supporting efforts of African Union member states to take practical evidence-informed actions to end extreme poverty, end hunger, and reduce inequalities. MUCHIRI has worked in technology and innovation, consulting for more than 24 years, 14 of which have been spent focusing on mission-driven governance, improved availability of data for decision-making, and open government in Africa. In this context, he has led research and implementation teams working in food security, nutrition, artificial intelligence, technology adoption, and good governance, areas that LDRI believe can help countries deliver on their development goals. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to MUCHIRI NYAGAH. Last and definitely not the least, this is slightly odd, JOANNE KURIA. She's a policy, human rights and communication specialist. She has over 10 years working experience in the government, East African community, media, and various NGOs. She's a trained lawyer with 2 master's degrees, one in strategic management and the other in public policy. Her work and purpose are anchored on Psalms 89. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. She serves as a communications and events lead at Mavuno Church, Lavington. She's taking church comms to a whole new level. She's married to Pastor David Kuria, and together they have 2 children. Ladies Ladies and gentlemen.
Your clap was not convincing, let me just tell you. The problems it can land me in. I might need someone's couch anyway. And I am very happily married, by the way, just to say. Hello. All right. Let's do this. I hope the dots have joined. Well, good. So good afternoon, everyone. Do you want to just say hello to the people? Mr. MUCHIRI NYAGAH on the end there. You're supposed to say good evening, viewers, or something like that, just to say hello to the people. Do you have a microphone there with you? Oh, all right. Oh, there you go.
And it is on. What a shock. There you go. Hi, everyone.
Grace, oh. All right. Grace, Murugi, right here. Just want to say hello to the people.
Hi, everyone. Ugandans.
And the beautiful JOANNE KURIA. All right. Let me do my best to try and gather myself and concentrate here. But maybe I will start with JOANNE KURIA. It's not really helping that I'm starting with you. But you've worked in the human rights space in different organizations. You've worked as the communications lead for Amnesty Kenya. You've worked for multiple NGOs that champion human rights in many different ways, many different spaces. You've worked with government, Trademark East Africa, and all these different organizations. I want to ask you, within the NGO space, organizations, the one thing we know about NGOs, they're always pushing out messaging. So if we're a climate change NGO, we are always pushing messaging about climate change. If we are a sexual health and reproduction rights NGO, that's a messaging we are always pushing out. And I want to ask you, how have you seen within the NGO space those organizations utilizing digital media?
Hello, Fearless. Oof, okay, I've caught my breath. So I think the NGO space in Kenya is about 30 years old. If you think about the second liberation in 1992, that's when the democratic and governance space began to open up. And that's when different NGOs began to employ different tactics to reach out to different audiences. So one of the ways that we have in the NGO space traditionally are known for is picketing and protests. That was the best way. You just go, you throw stones, you get some attention, and you get your agenda on the table. Other ways are lobbying, government lobbying behind closed doors. We also had emails and newsletters and things like that, and then we relied heavily on mass media. But over the past 5 years or so, there's been a dramatic shift in how NGOs pass their message and their narratives. So when I joined Amnesty in 2018, I scoured the internet to see which other NGO was doing anything dramatic and disruptive on digital. And there was hardly any in 2018.
Oh, wow.
It was bits and bobs here and there, and you could see some attempts, but there was no consistency, deliberate push. But now the game has completely changed. So in three particular ways. So one of the ways is owned media.
Owned media.
Owned media. So back in the day, we were hawkers. We would go to media houses and we would have media circuits, and we would literally befriend all the managing editors in the room so that we could pitch our stories. And human rights is not vogue, it's not sexy, it's not interesting. If we have a story and a political rally happens, our story is bumped to the next day, and then it loses any form of validity. And so we had to do a lot of hawking to media houses to get that attention. We don't need to do that anymore. So
you're saying if you have a campaign, for instance, what you had to do was go from media house to media house, pushing your narrative, begging them.
It doesn't even have to be a campaign. It could be children are dying, are starving. Yep. And the media houses would rather not show that picture and show a different picture, a political picture, for example. And so what then happened is that we used to beg quite a bit. We don't beg anymore. What has happened is I call them the captains of industry, folks who held onto the table and said, this is our space and they can't cede anything for us. We are now the captains of industry. They come to us for content. So for example, at Amnesty, I had 0 mass media budget. but I had significant digital media.
Oh, wow.
One of my roles was to create thought leadership and to make my executive director look good and sound good. And I did that pretty well. And I didn't do it with any help of mass media. We just began to see him as an influential person. We would write pieces for him. We would angle him online. And no sooner, we didn't need any big media house to push that agenda for us. Another way is, I believe Amnesty Kenya was the first NGO to join TikTok. I was a leader of a group of Gen Zers who were pretty disruptive. And
Sorry, I'm even confused. So Amnesty Kenya, human rights organization on TikTok.
Yes. So I led a
I'm still trying to understand, because when I'm on TikTok, those are not the kind of videos I see.
Yes.
But please proceed.
So I led a group of Gen Zs at Amnesty, and they had, people hate on Gen Zs, but Gen Zs are like the most awesome group of people. Like the energy that they have and the innovation that they have. And I remember sitting in a meeting and saying, what do we do? What do we do that will take this message to the next level? And then the next day we were on TikTok. We were on TikTok dancing. If you go to TikTok, you will see me dancing to some human rights videos. And that's how we started. And that was one incredible thing. Another meeting we sat on and said, why is human rights not something that people talk about? How do we get people to be interested in it? And somebody in the room, one of the Gen Zs said, we need to be able to strip down the complexity around human rights. And I was like, stripped down podcast. And the first Amnesty podcast was born. And so it's almost like I had the crystal ball that you're speaking to now and you're alluding to 5 years ago when we said, why don't we get onto TikTok? We were the first ones to get onto TikTok. I think, OXFAM, were you ahead of us? I don't know. I think we had a podcast before OXFAM, but we got into podcasting as well.
Maybe not.
I think maybe not.
It's beautiful that NGOs are now podcasting. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. The second thing that we did...
So what I'm hearing you saying, the first thing you're talking about there, I don't know if you caught that phrase, but you talked about owned media. And owned media refers to the fact that you own your own media. Whereas in the past you would go to traditional media, now you begin to create your own media platform and you have your own, your own media.
Exactly. And
somebody say, I am a media house. Because that's what you have. Everyone here has a slice of owned media that you own. Second thing.
And now they come to us. That's also the difference. The second thing was disruptive campaigns.
Sorry, that's also interesting, because what you're saying is, in the past you would go begging television and radio to play your content. Now you create your content on social media, and they come looking to your social media for content. Correct. And NGOs are doing that much more now.
Yes,
all right, go ahead.
The second thing is disruptive campaigns. So everybody has a story to tell, whether you're a church, whether you're an NGO, whether you're an individual. And there are some people who you need to tell the story to. And so one of the things that I feel the NGO space has done really well is to take an issue and coalesce around it and throw it at people as a disruptive digital campaign. So allow me to give an example of a campaign that we did. So I was part of a team, and we contracted 1,000 watts. There's a lot of nepotism happening here, but we contracted 1,000 watts to help us curate a campaign in 2021 around men's involvement in family planning. Family planning is one of those things that women sort of like have to figure out. How do husbands take on the responsibility as well? And so 1,000 watts helped us create this video.
Julius, Niaji, I've come for our things. Unajua vitu zetu. Wazi. Simkate Julius, zile vitu zetu. Unajua. Bro, our things. Unajua vitu zetu. Julius, mbona ushiki? Zile vitu zetu ziko hapo chini.
Julius, hauko serious?
Nataka
Kondo.
Condom
stunda usemi? Hata wewe. Mama nani? Hebu nipitishie hapo kondom 3 hivi. Alafu brand gani tano?
Julius, Sasa unaita mama nani?
Wachana nayo. Hii family planning ni ya madem. Na silipi.
So that was one in a series of 5 videos of a campaign called Cheza Kama Wewe. For the visitors, I really do not know how to translate Cheza Kama Wewe.
Play.
Play like you. It's colloquial language. It's
Play
like
like you.
Play like you. Okay.
Be you, do you.
Yeah, so it's a video of a man who's trying to buy, he's a married man trying to buy condoms, and he can't utter the word condoms, and as a result, the shopkeeper gives him everything else but what he truly went for. And it's just trying to, in a subtle, funny, satirical kind of way, package these conversations in a campaign. And it's funny because this campaign was not envisioned to be a regional campaign. It was a Kenyan campaign, but then we had a regional footprint. The campaign had over 52 million, the reach was over 52 million. 71% of the campaign was driven by the public, which in campaign management matrix, you actually want the public to resonate so much with your product or your campaign that they're the ones who are sharing it and talking about it. So it was, we have that slide somewhere or not, and that was really astounding. The last thing that I will say before I give the rest of the panelists a chance is influencer management. So from 2019, I've been consulting for an organization that's based in the States, and they are funded by one of the largest foundations. And their brief was simple. They were told, go to Kenya and Nigeria, look for influencers, support them in pushing messages of human rights and gender equality and social change. And that's what we've been doing for a couple of years. And I found that interesting that everybody, including this large foundation, is pumping a lot of money because they understand the power of an influencer and they understand the power of amplification. And as a result, we've had a lot of traction on different issues. For example, in the past, you would link a social issue with an NGO. Now you're linking a social issue.
Say, for instance, you'd say feeder in Kenya, and you'd think, women's rights. That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now you're seeing an influencer is now linked with a social issue. So before we would have subject matter experts who would speak in jargon and big words and stuff like that, going to speak about an issue. Now it's just an influencer, somebody as simple, as relatable as you and me, who's talking about why gender-based violence is harmful for the society, and that is pushing the needle. So for example, if an influencer has 1 million followers and you do a post with them, for example, 500,000 of their followers will see that post. And then 300,000 will interact with the content at a more granular level. And then maybe 50,000 will change behavior as a result. So the question is, does the church have influencers? Does the church have voices that can do the same thing and replicate and amplify some of these messages?
That's an incredible thought, an incredible question. Who are the influenced and the influential people? But I hope you're catching this conversation. What I'm hearing, what she's really talking about is this. Is she saying this particular sector has begun to understand the power of media and began to use that for the amplification of their messages? And there's obviously a question for us as kingdom people. But allow me to turn to Grace just for a moment. Grace, let me just tell you, by the way, is a highly credentialed digital strategist. She's one of the smartest minds in the digital field that I actually know. She's currently the head of digital strategy for OXFAM International, the global head of digital strategy. You guys don't sound impressed, but that's okay. I know you meet global heads all the time. I told you you're important people, but that's fine. You've also worked significantly in the corporate sector, both in the agency world with Scan Group, more recently with Safaricom as their digital manager, and there you've run some incredible campaigns. I'm hoping you'll tell us about that. So Joanne has spoken about the NGO world and how they've begun to leverage digital media. What have you seen in the corporate world about how they've begun to leverage digital media?
So first of all, I'm really happy to be here. So well done to everybody who's organized the Fearless Summit. And I'm here with my husband, so maybe we can just stand and say hi.
Mr. Greg, there he is.
Also happily married. So we're
Also
doing
happily
the
married.
event. So we're waiting for.
He might end up
for
on stage
Muchiri
at this
to tell
rate.
us. We're waiting for Muchiri to also acknowledge his status.
No
Now,
pressure.
No pressure, of course. Yeah. Now, the corporate sector, and I really like what Joanne has said in terms of the NGO sector, it's exactly what we do at OXFAM. And maybe what I can talk about is what, how corporates use digital media, and it's normally mainly just two jobs, yeah? So we're either selling you a product or a service, so dial star 544#, yeah? And buy that 1 GB bundle at 99 bob, that's gonna last you 24 hours.
Is this like paid advertising you're doing now?
I'm giving an example.
All right, go ahead, go ahead.
So selling products or services, and that's exactly what we did at Safaricom. But at Safaricom, we also did something else that was extremely critical to any brand, and that's growing brand equity. And it's really important to be able to do both jobs at the same time, and the digital space creates a perfect platform for us to be able to do that. So sometimes you'll see brands that have done a really good job in terms of building their brand equity will eventually, with time, you go to the shopkeeper and you say, nipatie ile blue band, ile ingine ya prestige, yeah? So then now Blue Band has done a really good job at building brand equity, and the digital platform is perfect for doing that. And I really like the statistics that you shared earlier in terms of like how digital has grown, and I think the COVID year was hands down the year that shifted everything to the digital space. And I was just very privileged to have been in the digital space during that shift. So we saw a lot of brands moving their communication from offline media into the digital media. Globally, we saw Lego, the toy company. If you have boys, we have 2 boys, and every day you step on a Lego, like it's standard, yeah? So the Lego company actually moved their spend from digital from 40% to 70%. Wow. And we saw a lot of that kind of shift globally. Locally at Safaricom, we actually moved our budget from 8% on digital, maybe pre-COVID, to 40% spend on digital. Wow. So you'll see lots of ads on YouTube and lots of ads on Facebook and Instagram, and just being present.
Let's just kind of take that in. What you're saying, and this happened on your tenure while you were at Safaricom, is that you moved your digital spend, what you're using on advertising, it was 8% on digital to 40% digital for Safaricom. Absolutely. That's you know, it's interesting because the one thing I remember about Safaricom ads is that you used to do this you guys know this incredible TV ads that they used to do? Yeah. This really panoramic ads that I'm sure would cost millions and millions to put together. I don't see them anymore.
Because they're now on digital, and we'll reach you, or they'll reach you now, with a communication that's specific for you.
Yes.
So we moved away from broadcast messaging to like very highly targeted marketing that will only reach the right person at the right time. And so there was also that shift. The other thing that we saw is that all of us are normally like this, yeah? Like even in the supermarket, you're like, hi Muchiri. Muchiri is probably like this. I'm like that all the time. One of the statistics that Google gave us at the beginning of this year is how many times do we think we do this motion, like the motion for raising our phones?
Some people are currently doing it, by the way.
Is it 50 times?
What, in a day or?
In a day, this motion.
It's a great question.
Is it 100?
200 times.
200. It's actually 287 times.
A day.
This motion, yeah? Now, imagine if we were lifting our Bibles like that, 287, like just...
Well done. Well done.
I think the world would be totally different if we were just lifting our Bibles all the time, quoting scripture. So the mobile device has become like such an integral part of our world. In fact, what we call it the attention economy. So everybody is seeking the attention of the consumer, right? And so it's the attention economy, and every time you're like, okay, what's happening now? So an ad will come up, and so where is your brand when that ad is coming up? So basically 287 times a single Kenyan, and this is a Kenyan statistic, 287 times, how many times has your brand been seen, yeah? Now, with the shift on COVID, we started seeing, and you spoke really well about it, David, in terms of like the rise of what we call ephemeral content, which is the content that disappears after 24 hours, yeah? TikTok blew up completely, yeah? And of course, Kenyans are representing, but the Kenyans we represent, yeah? We represent on Twitter, we represent on TikTok. Can you imagine if we were posting scripture? But that's a topic for another day.
It's coming.
But we really, really represent. The other place Kenyans actually represent is Facebook groups. We have the largest Facebook groups in Africa, yeah? I don't know what we're discussing in those groups. I don't know if it's cooking and cars and anyway. So then now with that, we started seeing a lot of changes, and what corporates needed to do is to relook 3 things. So the first thing is we needed to relook how we do our media, and media strategy, media buying, and all that. And so we saw a very big shift from planning for traditional media to planning from taking an integrated approach to include digital. So for example, Citizen is arguably the biggest video sharing platform in this country. The second one, what is the second one? Maybe somebody can help me with that.
Citizen is the largest video sharing platform in Kenya.
Absolutely.
Citizen Television.
Citizen Television.
So what you're saying is when a video is put there, it gets the largest reach.
It gets the largest reach.
Okay.
So if you're launching like a brand new product, it definitely has to be on Citizen. But what is number 2?
So if Citizen is number 1, what is number 2? So someone says Mavuno Church, I love you.
Oh, Mavuno Church, love it. Absolutely, that's true.
In Jesus' name, the senior pastor says.
So the second is actually not KTN or NTV, the second is YouTube, yeah? So anytime at Safaricom we would put something on Citizen, you definitely have to put it on YouTube, yeah? And so we saw a lot of that cross-pollination. Anytime you're putting an ad on radio, it has to be on Twitter. Why? Because when Maina and Kingangi's show is happening, it is the top trending topic on Twitter. Then anytime we put out, like say, billboards, we definitely have to do the Google Display Network, where you see those little banners and then you're able to click on them and buy a bundle or take whatever action that they want. You know, so we saw a lot of cross-pollination around media. The second thing was we needed to relook content altogether. So people are, with their 287 times doing that motion, people are not there to listen to something for like 40 minutes and 30 minutes. They're there to just get something really quick. Pastor M, as you were preaching, by the way, I was just collecting content. I was like, this should be recorded on, it should be recorded. We should have, of course, vertical format, because we watch videos like this and not like this. And then we share.
That's such an important nugget. You're saying that's how content is consumed.
Yeah, like this.
Not the other way.
Yeah.
Which is how we are used to.
We're still shooting like this, yeah? But then we should switch to shooting like this, so then it takes over the entire screen.
Okay.
So as Pastor M was preaching about the different types of Christians there are, I was like, this should be packaged into like a 1-minute video that, how many are we here? 1,000. That 1,000 of us share on our Instagram stories. So if I have 300 views on my Instagram stories on a really bad day, so 300 times 1,000, how many people have seen that clip, yeah? And so every time we think about, like say, Psalms 2 verse 8, ask for the nations, isn't this asking for the nations and God actually giving that to us?
That's incredible.
So we needed to relook content and how we package content. Then the third thing is ROI. I know all the corporate people here, that is the biggest conversation. Your boss will ask you yesterday, today, tomorrow, next year, what is the return on investment? So then now, those are some of the things that we needed to look at. If you've put out a video, how many people have watched it to the end? If you've put out something on YouTube, what percentage of those people watched 50% of the video? And if the ad did not have the call to action at the end, then you need to cut that call to action and retarget these people who watched like the beginning part of it. And then of course,
that's so incredible. I think you're getting what she's saying. You're saying if you put an ad, say, on television, you have absolutely no way of knowing what your ROI is.
Absolutely.
You have no idea, if people are actually watching it all the way to the end. Yeah. So you have spent this huge amount of money on television or radio, and you have no way. And you're saying, with with internet advertising, with digital advertising, you're able to figure out, okay, people watched 10 seconds of my ad.
Yeah.
This is the 2 seconds that they watched the highest.
Absolutely.
So if my call to action, for instance, was the end of the video,
Yeah.
and people didn't get to the end, then you have a chance to rethink your content and figure out, where do I put the call to action? What do I
Yes.
do with that?
Yeah.
That's really incredible.
Where did they drop off?
Where did they drop off?
So if it's 30 seconds and they've only watched till 20 seconds, then it means the remaining 10 seconds, what do we do with that? Yeah. So then what we'll do at Safaricom is to do a cut down for the last 10 seconds. And then, since we have all the audiences that have watched the first 20 seconds, retarget that audience with the 10 seconds. So you make sure, please, you've seen the call to action. Yeah? Like you've gotten to understand what the product is about, but you've also been able to see the call to action and then hopefully take an action. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's, you know, for me, what I'm hearing here, and even as I listen to this conversation, is I'm hearing how the world is responding to the change in technology, to the advancement in technology. We've heard what the NGO world is doing. We've heard what the corporate world is doing in as far as technology, you know. And the question is for us as kingdom people, what does that mean? And how do we begin to think like that and to begin to leverage different technologies for kingdom advancement? Now, I mentioned about how technology is always advancing and always changing. So for just a moment, we want to pause the conversation on the present and dive into the future. And Mr. Muchiri, you're the Executive Director of Local Development Research Institute, LDRI. And I know you guys have worked with AI and artificial intelligence, you know, and maybe you'll give us an example of some of the stuff that you're doing. But tell someone here who's asking for a friend, not for them, who's asking for a friend, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? And what is the journey of asking for a friend? Is that not true? The guys here know, they know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So your friend will have to worry no more. I shall provide a friendly way of remembering it. But first, thank you so much for the invite. My first time at Fearless. What? I am now officially Uganda adjacent. Yes. It is not even a shock, I'm telling you. A couple of things I've also picked up so far is from your stats. Clearly, I should get a second phone. Those numbers, I'm feeling left behind. And then from your stats, I think I found the answer to my workout problem. 287, I need 2 heavy phones. My problem will be sorted.
Well done.
I'll be no more fluffy. But enough of my fluffiness. AI. Where was I? There you go.
Okay, what was for a friend? What is AI? What's been the journey of it?
A friendly definition of AI. So artificial intelligence is simply computers that have been trained to simulate human intelligence. And you see it every day. And I'll give you a little bit of AI history in like 1 minute and just show you how you continuously interact with AI even today. And the reason why AI is such a powerful thing and has been around a whole lot longer than most of us realize is because computers can process data in volumes that we can't as a single human. So if you have very good computers, you can process data that would take a team of 50 scientists 50 years in 50 minutes or 50 seconds. I mean, it's extremely, extremely useful, extremely fast. But it's the idea of simulating human intelligence that makes AI what it is and not the business processing stuff that has been happening in the past. So just take you back, AI in the way that we know about it now finds its roots in the 1950s. So scientists called Alan Turing, it's probably from before him, but he's a good place to start. He posited, is the word I would want to use, that if you can have a conversation with a computer, with a machine, and be unable to distinguish that conversation from a machine to human or a human to human conversation, then that machine is thinking. Because you cannot distinguish whether you're speaking to a machine or a human being. So that idea of a machine that can think, which is a human thing, not just process, is where that whole journey, kind of really took off. But if you remember from the photos you've seen over the years, computers in the 1950s, yeah, I think the very first one had to be dropped with cranes. I mean, these things were massive and were still less powerful than the Nokia 3310 that was unbeatable and unbreakable. But because of the limitations, the math, the science on paper was already very advanced. But the technology, the hardware hadn't caught up. But the places where people started testing and playing around with this was with games. So the very fast, like AI-ish tech that began to make its way into the public space was the games. So chess, checkers, and up till now, gaming is still one of the biggest places you see AI. So we've been seeing AI from your chess computer games when you had Windows 3.11. Gen Z, don't worry, we shall explain that one later. This is before Windows 95, right? And of course now with all these gaming devices that we now have, you know, we are using a lot of AI on Xbox and Nintendo and whatever. But the gaming thing started a whole long ago. So if you come, you know, to the more nearer future, going into the late 70s and the early 80s, you had all this movement in terms of robotics, expert systems. This was a system that can do just one thing and do it very, very well. You see the videos of a robot that can delicately pick up an egg and move it and not break it. That's all it can do. Do not ask it to predict the weather. Don't ask it to play chess. It can't. It can pick up an egg. There were expert systems. Later on, of course, you have the systems that were expert systems, but were able to perceive what was going on around them. So theoretically, that robot wants to move an egg, but can sense there's someone coming. It can stop and wait for someone to pass and then put the egg down. You know, some of this stuff you see on the documentaries when they talk about manufacturing, and you see all those big machines that move all by themselves, that kind of robotics. But we have had robotics that's on your phone, robotics that, you know, AI that's built into software, and that we continue to use today, and that has become possible because of all the research and the mathematics and the hardware that has been made possible. So where we are today, you're interacting with AI all the time. You picked up your phone. I found out today that there are some people with technos. Those with iPhones, they use Siri. They use Siri, and they didn't even say amen. But whether it's Siri or Alexa or Google Voice or whatever it is, any of these platforms that you use, when you speak to them and then they respond, it's an AI. It's artificial intelligence. It's the same way you speak to a human being and they respond. It's simulated. And that's there now with dictation, you know, making some of our work really easy. Open Google Docs, click on a mic, and just speak to the thing. You know, and magic happens. If you're on YouTube, we're talking about YouTube just now. If you're not on a live stream, there's a closed caption, little button there with the 2 C's. You click on it, and it gives you subtitles for a conversation that is happening in real time. That's an AI that's listening and typing out faster than a human being could possibly do. So we've come from Alan Turing with a theory to an actual AI that we're using today. And don't even get me started on ChatGPT. Yeah, I was telling Grace earlier, there are people who easily found the time. Whereas last year, you really struggled to make time for Fearless. This time, ChatGPT helped you produce your report 2 days earlier. And you've met all your targets for the month. And now this is now the most spooky side of AI that we're seeing, generative AI. This is artificial general intelligence. This is an AI that you can talk to about anything, economics, Swahili, the history of the church. I learned a lot from ChatGPT about church politics in the medieval ages. You know, we're in this era where technology is creating content. And can decipher trends and be able to speak back and say, you know, these guys did not listen to the whole podcast. They had the first 10 seconds. Maybe you should do it in Kikuyu. You know, that's really where we are right now. But the future, I think, is.
Let's switch gears and talk about the future a little bit, and talk about the future with us in mind. You've got church.
and marketplace leaders here who are hearing this conversation, maybe trying to wrap their minds around it. How many people here use ChatGPT, by the way? How many people have no idea what ChatGPT is? All right.
So there are a few people who want to ask for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
Oh, okay.
Just very, very briefly before we go on to the next question.
Okay, ChatGPT is a system online that's essentially like it's a chat. It's like WhatsApp but on a screen. You get to type in any question. Okay, even WhatsApp is on a screen. Let me see. But anyway, you get to ask it anything. You just type in whatever question you want, and it gives you back a response. And I'm talking about questions like, could you give me an analysis of the book of Mark, and the relationship between Jesus and the disciples vis-a-vis the relationship between Jesus and the disciples in the book of Matthew. It will tell you. That's ChatGPT.
So it's like having a conversation with a really super intelligent person who's able to answer questions for you, but also generate for you, whether it's reports, whether it's essays, homework, assignments,
yes,
or things like that. And that's all generative AI. I want to move on a little bit and just say, so I was saying, here we are sitting with church and marketplace leaders. Have you seen, for instance, the church use AI, and is there any opportunity for the church where AI is concerned?
Yes, I think there are lots of opportunities. Some of these that I mentioned are already being used. I'll not ask church leaders to raise their hand and explain their use of ChatGPT, but that's an example of AI already being used in the context of the church. But in terms of institutionally, there are areas, especially in digital, we're talking about some of the communications and the responsiveness that you kind of have to do now based on all the multiple channels. How do you catch an issue in mid-air? We have technology now that can even better analyze sentiments and be able to give you signals that you're getting a lot of content that sounds fearful from this area and this demographic. And when you look at that content, it might have to do with an emerging issue that is only now, probably in your view, very nascent in the news. That's a kind of technology now that can allow you to get ahead of an issue, of a topic, and probably decide, okay, I think we need to address this on Sunday before it becomes a full-blown
so an
area
AI
of concern.
platform, for instance, that could, for instance, look at your social media feeds over the past hashtags, 5 years, analyze, create some meaningful data for you that says, hey, maybe every 3 years you have this cycle, maybe of marriage challenges, or maybe whatever it is, and say, how do we predict to know what, how to be able to respond to that?
Yes, and then of course there are infrastructure challenges now. COVID kind of was a good example of one that came up. Now you couldn't walk to church, you couldn't walk to your pastor's house, you couldn't, you had questions, you needed an answer, you need to figure that out. You can't find phone numbers. And now what had happened is people started using chatbots a lot. So you go on WhatsApp, and there's this thing. Spycom did a very good job. Was that you as well? Zuri. So you could go for Safaricom, you go on the app and chat with Zuri, this virtual assistant, and Zuri will help you. Now we're seeing a whole lot more of the chatbots being used within the church to provide additional information, allow congregants to unpack, for instance, Sunday's message a whole lot more, and figure out, what do I want to learn more about, in this particular area. One church that has, I think, a very good example of a chatbot is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church recently launched Catholic.chat. So get on there, and I think you will find
so
it a bit surprising.
I can go online to Catholic.chat.
Catholic.chat, just go in there and just ask it. Just ask, how much does it cost to become a member of the Catholic Church? I asked it. I did. It was flabbergasted. It almost told me off. It was, that it's AI,
yep.
But you feel like you're getting responses from a customer service team on the other side. And they've made it so that it's responsive based on the kind of the age of the person. So if you're a child, it gives an icon, you can tap on an icon, and and it'll respond in an age-appropriate way. So that's the chatbots are now, I think, probably the lowest hanging fruit that allows a church to continue to make available part of its care infrastructure, part of its teaching infrastructure to congregants away from the main touch points that might be Sunday e-groups or other physical meetups.
I don't know if you guys saw maybe 2-3 months ago a church in Germany that had an entire service led by AI. I don't know if was it in Germany?
It was in Germany, yeah.
Yes, it was in Germany that had an entire service. So think about it this way.
And those were the Protestants. Those were the Protestants. It said that.
From Germany. So think about it this way. Think about if we were planning for Fearless Summit, and none of us were there to plan for it, and you came in and through the power of artificial intelligence said, what kind of music, if they were able to analyze the audience and say, what kind of music would you guys like? And the music starts playing on the screen, and the lyrics begin to play on the screen, based on the different variables that it gathers in terms of the different variables and intelligence it gathers from the audience. And it plays the music and we sing along to it. Then think about at the end of that, it says, okay, so who's in this audience? And this is in real time. And what AI does is says, okay, what are the issues of these people who are here? And what kind of sermon could I possibly preach to them? And what this thing does is actually creates a sermon in real time and is able to put it up on the screen and give you, what is it called, when there's like a person speaking.
It's like an avatar of sorts.
Like an avatar.
Yeah.
And an avatar appears and preaches this sermon to you, does an altar call for you, and prays for you at the end of the service. And says to you, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you, may the Lord make his face shine on you. Go and have a great week. Oh, and tithe. Is someone asking about and tithe? Now that's kind of like where this thing is headed, I saw this on, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw this example of someone who puts on their sermon. So say, for instance, Apmo has a sermon, a wonderful message that he's preached, and he puts it on some sort of platform. And what this thing does is it says, okay, where are people watching this? Where are people watching this thing from? And you'll find there's someone in Croatia who's watching Apmo's message. And it says, okay, analyze this person's data and ask yourself, how he speaks in English, how well do they know English? And say, okay, maybe they don't know English that well. Maybe their first language is Croatian or Russian or one of those. And in real time, it figures out where you are. It figures out, what your preferences are, and is able to translate that for you in real time, either through audio or through text. And you can imagine the power of that. If I was speaking here, and people who are watching this broadcast from around the world in their own language, and with avatars that look exactly like them. That is really what we're talking about in terms of the power of this thing. Let me just ask us, what do you hear what do you feel when you hear that? Is there a sense of dread about it? Will Apmo lose his job? Will Pastor Murugi lose it? Will I lose my job for Fearless because there's artificial intelligence that kind of takes over? Is there a fear that one day it may be artificial intelligence that's doing counseling for you? You go for marriage counseling and it just kind of spits out advice and says, this is what... Is there any concern about that?
So maybe I can say the one sentence that everybody is saying, maybe I could repeat it here. AI will not take our jobs, yeah? So even me, my job will not be taken by AI. However, the digital strategist who adopts AI faster than I do will take my job, yeah?
Oh, wow.
So, for example...
Wait, have you guys heard that? Did you get that? AI will not take your job. The person who will take your job is the person who adopts AI before you. And I think this is the truth of all technology, including digital technology that we started with, and we'll get back to in a moment. That's really profound, but please go ahead.
Yeah, so for example, even as you're talking about pastors, there's something that AI cannot deliver. And we're actually just talking about it backstage, like care and visiting people when they're bereaved and things like, there are things that a gadget can't do, yeah? So there's a component that will not be taken over. However, this is actually the world our children are growing up in. So what we need to do is to quickly figure out how do we enter that world as a church. So anytime we're having like a conversation like this, the next thing is always that, oh, this corporate is going to pick it up. This corporate is going to pick it up. Now, the church also needs to pick it up very quickly so that we stay ahead of the conversation. So when our children, Greg and I have 2 children, age 10 and 7, and let me tell you guys, when I was studying computer science versus what they're doing at their age is completely different. So like we were doing calculators in year 4 of computer science, these kids, age 7, are creating games. There's a whole platform called, what's the name of the platform? Scratch, thank you. They go on Scratch and they create games and they're like, Mom, come and play a game. And then pole pole, you're like, oh my gosh, this kid has actually thought through an entire game at age 7. You know, so that kid is growing up in a totally different world. So how quickly now we can be able to adopt, I think now becomes the conversation.
I feel like we've gone very far into the future. I want to pull us back but maybe before I do, just one last thing. You told me about a conference you went to in Portugal. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
So I had the privilege of going to Portugal last year. I attended something called the Web Summit, which is basically the coming together of all the technology giants around the world. Very similar to Fearless Summit, which is the coming together of all the brilliant minds in the church. Now, Web Summit, I went in, and so they have different stands, and they have different like plenary sessions, so you break out into all these different rooms. You arrive, and they download an app onto your phone that shows you this is where you are. So if you want to go to the other side, this is the, you know, they show you a literal map where you walk now to whatever session you want to attend. However, the thing that I came home with was this experience where I went into this Hong Kong university stand, and they were demonstrating what AI, the metaverse, and Web3 is eventually going to look like. So you arrive at the stand, and then you wear the headset, and then you have the controls on your hands. And then, of course, you create an avatar. So the first thing you do there is create an avatar. So it has to take like your skin tone and all that stuff. So there's an avatar called Grace that's in that world. Then I got into the Hong Kong University metaverse, yeah? And of course, a lot of it is like AI powered, so it's very futuristic. Then I was able to actually walk around in this virtual university, and then you pick a class. So there are like 10 different classes around that room, yeah? So then I picked this class on like psychology and IT. And I walked in. Now the most shocking thing happened. So I'm seated there, I'm a Kenyan. To my right is somebody from Australia, to my left is somebody from the UK. We're all attending this class at the same time. So same day, same time, meaning the simulation was happening at the same time wherever those guys were, yeah? Now, what shocked me more is that we're able to talk. The way we're talking on this stage, and with you guys, we're able to have a conversation. And I was like, oh my gosh, the world has completely changed. I have taken a lot of online classes and all that, but like this experience, the experience was totally different. And that's the world that I keep saying our children are growing up in. And so the importance of being able to catch up with technology and move with it so that we can always be like 2 steps ahead even as they're growing up in this world. And so for me, I think that was the biggest metaverse, Web3, AI experience I've ever had. Then I walked into like an Apple stand, and same thing. So you wear the headset, and then you have the controller, and then you walk into an Apple shop, yeah? So when you walk into this Apple shop, you're able to choose whatever merchandise you want. I remember picking like an Apple Watch, and then you try it on, so your avatar tries it on. So now, because your complexion is the same, yeah, you can actually see how this watch is going to look like on your skin, yeah? Now, you pay using your credit card, you put in your shipping details, and whatever it is you bought in that world is delivered to your house. And I was like, now this is not online shopping anymore. This is completely immersive experience. And so what we were discussing backstage is, so if we were to bring that to the church, where are the amens? So if we were to bring that into the church, where from my house or from, wherever it is, people can wear the headsets and then enter like a conversation about marriage. So maybe there's a conversation happening in that room regarding marriage, in that room about this whole new age thing about your truth, my truth, whose truth are we? Yeah. So then we have that going on. We have a parenting class going on. We have the queer community conversation going on somewhere, and then we're all able to participate in this from the comfort of maybe your home or the comfort of, or maybe you've traveled and you want to plug into Mavuno and have an immersive experience, then you can actually be able to do that. What's more important is the fact that you can interact with somebody from a different part of the world on this side, and a different part, somebody from another part of the world on this side, without anybody ever having to travel, yeah? So I just thought that was something completely different. And so the question is now, what are we going to do to be able to join that conversation?
Fearless 2030, yeah? Just buy your headset, and wherever you are, you will have an immersive experience. But yeah, I do feel like we have gone very far into the future, and I want to pull us all the way back. Do you guys feel like you're at a TED Talk? I feel like I'm at your TED Talk. I've just joined your TED Talk. But I want to pull us back, and can we come back to your experience with corporate and digital media, which is probably a bit closer to where our current reality is. Let me ask you, do you see any opportunities for the church where digital media is concerned?
Absolutely, there are so many opportunities for the church. And maybe a good place to start would be something that occurred to me this week as I was thinking about being here today. And then I remember I was talking to my husband and I told him, oh my gosh, do you realize that the church has what we crave as digital marketers and advertisers? The church has content every single week. There's 1 to 2 hours of content being produced in every church, every single week. This is a sermon, yeah? Now, what do we do with this content? Most of it ends up living on YouTube, which is fantastic because then you can come back and watch the video and then, so have that experience. But then the question is, because of how we have seen people interacting, and I've run a couple of campaigns, and what I've seen working is short, snackable pieces of content that are, say, 30 seconds long, 1 minute long, and then these ones are served on, we've talked about TikTok today, and TikTok, by the way, is a new search, yeah? So us guys are still doing Google search. The generation after us is like, what's Google search? Then they're on TikTok search. So, so put that content on TikTok, put that content on Instagram stories. There was a new app that has gone live today. I'm sure we all followed that conversation, called Threads, which is supposed to be rival Twitter. So it's an open platform where you have conversations, all that, but then put our snackable pieces of content on Thread, and then put it on Facebook stories and all these places. And when people watch that, it all links back to the YouTube video that has the full sermon, yeah? So then it creates that sort of experience. We've talked about like the church also, the congregants. Actually, this challenge is even to me, yeah, as a Christian. So if I was to pick like a sermon or a sermon snippet, like what happened today morning, and it was really beautiful, and then I put that on my stories, then it's able to reach like a wider audience. So I think we are yet to sort of leverage the congregation a lot more. There's so much that can happen from that perspective.
Thank you so much. I know we're running out of time, but I really do appreciate the insights that we have. By the way, one of the things that I didn't say about Grace, do you guys remember a massive campaign that ran, must have been last year, called, was it the Eliud Kipchoge campaign via Safaricom? She was responsible for that, ladies and gentlemen. This was a global campaign that you ran, hugely successful. I just thought, to mention that. But I'm very grateful for the insights, because what we are hearing here is insights from the NGO world. What are they doing? How are they beginning to leverage media? Corporate world, how are they beginning to leverage new media, digital media? But then also we've taken a bit of a snapshot into the future to say, what's coming down the pike for us? So that we are well aware. You may not know very much about things like AI right now, but in the days to come, it's coming down the pike. And the sooner we, as kingdom people, begin to have those conversations and begin to kind of wrap our minds around it, the better it is for everyone. I want to ask, maybe I'll start from Muchiri. Just a parting shot for you from the conversation that we've had today.
Be fearless.
I like it.
Don't be afraid of AI. Yeah, those who are willing to change, who are willing to adapt, will be able to amplify and accelerate. So take advantage of the opportunity and the wisdom God has given us.
All right, thank you so much. How about you, Grace?
So my challenge to us is, yes, be fearless. And that's captured very well on one of my favorite Bible verses, which is Joshua chapter 1, verse 8. And it says, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, yeah? And I think we all know, like, Joshua was entering the new land. And so for us, is this the new land, what we've just discussed? And so be strong and courageous. But I think the other thing that I'd want to say is that we need to be very adaptable. And I keep asking myself how adaptable I am, yeah? So my personality is choleric, so I think that sometimes I'm a bit adaptable, but how adaptable am I to the change that's coming? And I think the final thing is to just encourage us as Christian marketplace leaders to join even difficult conversations, because there's a place for that, yeah? So sometimes we shy away from working for government, as an example, or we shy away from working for NGOs and working from agencies. But I think that how are we going to influence change if we do not sit at those decision-making tables? So it's just a call to all Christians. My best friend is actually a whole principal secretary in this administration. Yeah. So she's holding her inch in government. I'm holding my inch in the NGO space. Jojo is holding her inch. Kuri is holding his inch. Muchiri is holding his inch. We should all hold our inch and then be able to influence conversations for the kingdom. Yeah, so that's it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We haven't heard your voice in a while. Maybe you can tell us your parting shot as well. What have you heard in the conversation? What are you thinking?
So a few years back, I was seated somewhere here, and Pastor Julian Kula came up on stage, and he introduced me to a word that I had not had before called the moonshot. And he said, a moonshot. The moonshot. And he said, and I believe he's going to be a speaker either tomorrow or the day after. And he said, a moonshot happens in every generation. In some generations, the moonshot was a particular invention, right? And he gave examples of the apple, for example, is a moonshot. And a moonshot is one of those things that catalyzes that generation to the next level. And for example, Michael Jackson could be considered a moonshot. You know, Apple could be considered a moonshot. Digital in this generation is our moonshot. A few months ago, my husband and I got the privilege of leading Mavuno Church Lavington. And one of the roles that I play is the head of communications and events. And I remember him telling me, just post, and I would get 1 like and 2 likes. But I was consistent, and I remember feeling really discouraged. And one day he told me that you do realize that digital is our biggest outreach tool as a church. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it didn't occur to me until a few weeks later, we got visitors who saw our page on Instagram, and that's how they came to church. Visitors are not coming to church because of word of mouth anymore. They can see your digital presence, and the more you're consistent, the more you rise up in the algorithm, and they can get access to you. The last thing I'll say is a phrase that I learned called listening to the river. So fishermen, as is popular in Africa, you know where to cast your net and at what point of the day or the night. You know if you cast your net at this particular spot, you're going to get fish. If we listen to the river as a church community, we'll know that we need to harness our voices. Because I tell you, in the INGO space, there's a narrative that's being pushed and that's choking us, right? There's a sexuality narrative, for example. And if we do not have a counter voice, our children are going to listen to that voice. It's the only voice they see and they hear. Yep. So are you going to cower behind and say, I don't do digital, and let somebody else raise up your children, right? Are you going to cower behind and say, I don't do digital, and let the folks in your neighborhood go to the bars and the clubs? So it's time for us to rise up and say, what is the moonshot? If I'm listening to the river in this generation, how do I leverage digital for the good and for the glory of the kingdom? And so just before this, I noticed that Pastor Murugi has about 5,200 followers on Instagram. He's our movement leader, folks. Can we get him to 10,000 by the end of Fearless? Upmore has slightly less, about 4,900. These two individuals are our influencers. When we speak about issues like the Shakahola cult that we saw, they may mention something about it, but you will not hear because you are not amplifying. You're amplifying Jose Chameleon or Aziad or whoever else is. These are the people that you should be influencing. So please, ladies and gentlemen, get out your phones, follow your campus pastor, follow the influencers that we need to see being replicated and amplified for the sake of our generation.
Wow. That's such a good place to land that conversation. Again, what we are saying is this. We are looking at the world around us. And the world around us has messaging. Everybody has a message for us. And they are finding incredible ways to amplify the message that they have. Who has a more compelling message than the kingdom message? Who has a more compelling message than the message about not just this life, but about eternity as well, other than kingdom people? Tell someone next to you have a compelling narrative. You have an incredibly compelling narrative. And I think the question that I'm hearing from the people here is, whose voice are you amplifying? Whose messaging are you amplifying? I loved the question, the thing you said, because you said, we are following and amplifying all sorts of voices in our world. What would it mean for us to intentionally begin to amplify kingdom agenda and kingdom voice in the spaces that we are in? Are you guys up for the challenge that she's given you? I absolutely love that challenge. You know, I say this. The church has a compelling narrative. Secondly, we have something which, let me tell you, and I've said this, probably said this before at Fearless, we have something that if Safaricom got, let me tell you, they would be in another stratosphere completely. We have something which they crave more than anything else. Do you know what we have? Every week, what the church does, it meets its customers, its consumers. Every single week, the church meets hundreds of thousands, if not millions of consumers every single week. And they bring themselves with a pen and paper and they say, tell us what it is that you want us to do. Tell us. Think about if Safaricom had the opportunity every week to meet 2,000, not even 100,000, 2,000 customers who would say, tell us what you want us to do. And what we must learn to do is to say, how do we take this incredible message that we have and the incredible critical mass that we have and say, we must learn to amplify. You know, more often than not, people say something. I hear something in our context. The church is silent on a matter. Ever heard that phrase? People say, what does the church have to say about Shakahola? What does the church have to say about this issue? Or Shakahola is a trending topic in the country about various cults, a particular cult. And people say, what does the church have to say about that? But let me ask you, if Pastor M spoke about Shakahola, is he the church? Is he a church leader? He has. But we haven't learned to amplify his voice. We haven't learned to amplify, I'm just using it as an example, but we haven't learned to amplify the voice of the people who are influential. Now, what we've talked about here is, I guess, in a very worldly way of talking about it, is influencer marketing. That's what the world calls it. But what we are really talking about is, who are the people who are influential within the kingdom? Whether they are influential in the area of business, family, church, whatever sector they're in, have we learned to say, these are our influencers? And somehow it's up to us to be able to amplify their voices so the kingdom agenda is heard at the end of the day. It's very easy for us, and like what you said, it's very easy for me to spend my time on social media following all sorts, and I'm not against, that's not the point of this. Following all sorts of people, liking, retweeting, commenting. But I want to challenge you as you leave this place. I want to challenge you about your social media engagement. Is it amplifying kingdom? Is it amplifying kingdom agenda? Is it growing
the following of those who are amplifying kingdom agenda. So we've been left with an incredible challenge. And I think we are up to that challenge. Are we not up to that challenge? I think we are up to that challenge. How do we begin to amplify? We must amplify. Tell someone, you must begin to amplify the kingdom voice. You must begin to amplify the kingdom voice wherever you are. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to celebrate this panel. Mr. MUCHIRI NYAGAH. I want to celebrate Grace Murugi. I want to celebrate JOANNE KURIA as well. Thank you so much for your time.